Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for this March edition of Founders Friday Subject Matter Expert webinars. We're delighted to have an expert in our particular subject topic. Today's webinar is how to succeed in negotiations with an 800-pound gorilla and other big clients, partners, and investors. And we're delighted to have as our expert speaker, Neil Centuria, who I invite you to search on LinkedIn to see Neil's full bio, but a few highlights. Neil is the CEO of Black White Ventures. He's also a contributing writer with the Union Tribune and the author of I'm There For You, Baby. He is an extremely successful entrepreneur as well as investor, and has launched and founded several of his own ventures, as well as been the investor in a number of ventures. So take a look at his bio and check that out. In addition, prior to going on as a serial tech entrepreneur, he was very successful in the real estate development area as well. So with that, good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Kim, and good morning to the listeners. So here's a proposal. I'll talk for, 30 or 40, 35 minutes. You guys can text to Miss Folsom some questions. If we have some questions, I'll try to answer them, and we'll try to be efficient and either end on time or slightly early so you can go and do other things. So the starting for this is that essentially everything is negotiable, and I'm going to tell a story to prove it. It's not my story, but there's a famous story that has been circulated by both Ken Blanchard and Dan Brown. I'm sure you know who they both are. Dan Brown, famous novelist, and Ken Blanchard, of course, is 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. So the story he tells is he goes to the airport. This is, 2 or 3 years ago. And he gets to the TSA line, and he does not have his identification. So the guy says, "You can't get on." He says, "No, you don't understand. I'm Ken Blanchard." The guy says, "No, you don't understand. You don't have any identification." So Blanchard is pretty clever. He says, "Well, can I prove to you I'm Ken Blanchard?" He says, "No." So he says, "But just wait. It's negotiable." He wants to get on the plane. Blanchard reaches into his briefcase and takes out a copy of the book. And the book, of course, has a picture of him on the back. Holds it up to the TSA guy. Says, "See, Ken Blanchard, here's my ticket. I am Ken Blanchard." And they let him on the plane. And the exact same thing, the story is told once again, a year or so later, by Dan Brown. And so the story is that, everything is negotiable. You just have to think about how you're going to achieve it. So I like that story. Kim, do you want to just go through your list? You want to go through your list of questions?
Sure, but I would like to, I also want to share the perspective of those entrepreneurs that don't have your network well. And so, you're a successful entrepreneur as well as investors. To start that path of negotiation, what's the best way for someone to connect with someone who is, capable and has the capacity going into it? How would you most do that?
You broke up a minute. What was the question? By the way, the Dan Brown book that got him through airlines was The Da Vinci Code, of course. That was Tom Cruise. Was it Tom? No, not Tom Cruise, the other guy. I'm getting old. But it is anyway. It's the Da Vinci Code that got Dan Brown through the security. What was the question again, Kim?
Oh, I was asking you, what would you recommend is the best way to connect and recruit a capable, qualified investor or a partner?
Well, the classic answer for finding investors is to use your network. This is a very interesting question. It's an interesting puzzle in that investors are looking for deal flow, and the entrepreneur is looking to get in front of the investor. And you would think that they each want each other in some way would be easier, but it's not. I think, the classic answer for getting in front of or to be seen by or meet with an investor is a network referral. But I'm going to give you a different perspective, and then I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask yet. The problem, I'm going to take the position of the entrepreneur for a minute and say it's really equally important to find the right investor.
That's what I was talking about.
There's a classic sentence that says,
capacity and capability.
Yeah, but not just that they have money. There's a cost to smart money. So let's assume that money is fungible and there's lots of it. That's not always true, but entrepreneurs, trust me, it's out there. And occasionally you end up with a choice between smart money that says, I'll give you smart money, but I want 20% of your company, and dumb money that says, I'll give you the money, I only want 15% of the company. So smart money is usually more expensive than dumb money, and I'm going to tell you 99.82% of the time, you want to pick smart money. So you asked a question about negotiation, about entrepreneurs and investors, and I'll tell two stories. So one is, I have a company where a man comes to me and says, I'd like you to invest, and I say no, but you got something interesting. So instead of investing, I'll ask you to pay me a couple of dollars for 3 months, and I'll be an advisor. I'll try to help you, but I'm not promising to invest. So he essentially, in that interaction, he comes and says, this appears to be a relatively rational investor, and I'm willing to spend a couple dollars because he might be able to improve my pitch. So that sequence was, he made a small investment of money, and I made a small investment, or maybe even a big investment of time. Here's how the story ends. 3 months later, remember at the beginning I promised nothing except I'll give you some advice. At the end of 3 months, it was clear that he had a great idea, a great product. He was really a qualified CEO. He was a domain expertise. So I actually joined the board, got some stock, gave him $100,000, and convinced him that to take that money along with others at a valuation that was rational. So that was an example of the entrepreneur essentially being slightly patient. He made a gamble. He said, I'll engage with this guy, a little bit of a dance, and the guy says, I'm capable of writing a check, but I want to know more about you. So this, I would call it classically due diligence, but one of the ways is that I spent a lot of time mentoring, and in the mentoring, I saw that he was terrific. So one of the ways not to negotiate with him, but to find one, is essentially say, you're not looking for money. You say, I'd like some guidance. This is a sort of a trick, which is, what you really want is money, but you say, I don't want money. What I'd like is, could you give me some mentoring? So the goal there would be to simply lure the guy in a little bit. Let me give you the other side. So I got another company. I feel like Carter's Little Liver Pills. That's a joke that only old people would understand. So here's a company where it's a second-time CEO. I backed him the first time, and we made a ton of money together. It's a long story, but this is a guy I know. He's like he's sort of like out of Goodfellas. He's handsome, he's charming, he's mafia, he's a cockroach. You can't kill him. So he starts a second company. I backed the first. We were successful. He calls me up. Backed the second. And we now are sitting today, literally today, with a term sheet from a guy we don't really like. It's just too painful to do this. We're also at a point where we don't exactly have enough money. You never do. So we're a little bit out of money, and we're facing taking a term sheet that is not particularly reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The key piece of that puzzle is the people. So if you can, this goes back to smart money, dumb money, and who, sort of shared goals. So in this case, the giver of the term sheet has a reputation as sort of a tough guy, and his lieutenant, his spear carrier, is really sort of, I would say, difficult. So we get on the phone last night, my entrepreneur and I, and we face a really interesting question, which is, what do we do? And so what happened was, when we got the term sheet from the guy, all of a sudden, this is classic, he gets 3 more phone calls from other venture capitalists. So a month ago, nobody would return his phone call, and now his phone is ringing because he has a term sheet. It's not a very good one, but he has one. So now he leverages the one he has, and he says to Jones, I got a term sheet from Smith. I don't really love it. What do you think? He says, I got a better deal for you. So now we're in a position where we can tell the first guy, it's not going to really work for us. But I will tell you, there was a tendency or a moment a while ago, 4 days ago, where, maybe we'll take it, it's all we've got. So here's a story for the entrepreneur. It is really hard to walk away. But the most powerful negotiation technique is to draw a line in the sand and not cross it. You can't imagine the power of no. I've thought about it. The answer is no. Well, what do you mean no? I don't want to do it. But wait, I don't want to do it. As soon as you say I don't want to do it, it's a little bit like dating, I'd like to get married. No, I don't think so. And then she says, well, I'm leaving you. He says, no, wait. No, I'm totally wrong. So the power of no is pretty impressive. In this case, we are going to walk from term sheet 1, which is not very good, because we believe, here's the straddle, that we can get a better one that has, we'll just call it better terms and better people. But you'd ask me, do you have the other one? No, not yet. So you're going to walk away from a bird in the hand because you think there's one at least in the bush. And the answer is yes, because the bird in our hand probably will peck us to death. Mm-hmm. So that's the experience of two sides of, one is negotiating for the entrepreneur and the other is negotiating, not really against, but at least against the investor.
So I'd like to peel that scenario a little bit further. Have you been in a situation where you got that unfavorable term sheet and there was a way to go back and forth to make it better, or is it best to walk away? So that's one question. And secondarily, it was interesting because I too use the thing of, you always get a better outcome as long as you're dating multiple people, not just one. In that scenario, you mentioned that he initially didn't have additional offers, but eventually he did get other interests later on. So he planted those seeds beyond just putting all of his eggs in one basket, but would be interested in hearing your take on both those perspectives.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to you can improve negotiations. You don't have to be take it or leave it. The most important things in a negotiation, there's 3. I'll give them to you: power, information, and time. So sort of who has the power and how perfect is the information, who knows what, and what time pressures are there. And they change all the time. but but I like the one. I like them all, but I particularly like time. Um, it depends. Time and timing are really important. So in this case, I mean, in those two cases, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to end, but what has happened on the information side is as the time passes, the company continues to do better, not worse. As your company does better, your cards and power increase. And if you have two offers, or at least two people dating you, you have a lot of leverage, get to sort of pick. And I guess the third piece of that, power, information, and time. Time is, do they need to do a deal? Is it in their sweet spot? So I'm involved. This is a really complicated story. I funded a very complicated biotech. A bunch of geniuses out of Boston and Cambridge in the microbiome space. Whoa. Took a long time to get the license. It was aggravating. But what happened, and it was really a gamble. It was a low valuation, $500,000, but no certainty that we could get there. And what happened is during the year of aggravation, the space, the thing called microbiomes, got hot. And we ended up with 3 venture capitalists, all of them in the monster size, 10 to 30 million, because of the timing. And it was a little bit like, if you're in biotech, you got to have something in the microbiome category. You can have drugs, you can have cancer, you can have immunotherapy, but you got to have something. It's a little bit like filling their dance card. So we got lucky with respect to time and timing. But in that case, which is not really a negotiation, it's just a story, the bet was on the jockey. So there's a woman, PhD, MD, somebody who got their PhD at 9, MD at 12, and won the Nobel Prize at 14. So this is a really smart woman. And although we didn't really have it all figured out, the bet was an easy one to make. She's a winner. And it has proven to be the case. We've got deals and money, and it's worked out really well. But it isn't always clear. So in that case, it was clear that this woman, she was worth the bet. It's not always the product or the market or the business plan. At the end of the day, it's not only, and of course it's the team, but it's also and it isn't always the CEO. This woman is not the CEO. She's the chief chief science officer. We've got someone else. But that's a story on betting on the person. I like betting on the person.
So I want to ask, thanks for sharing that. I want to ask a question. In your book, I'm There for You, Baby, you talk about you negotiated to sell your company to a much larger company, but you started from the perspective that you said you were going to buy them.
Yeah, I'll tell that story. It's a little bit out there. So your listeners, this feels like one of those advertisements where they say, it's like those driving where he's going 100. Don't try this at home. This is, as I look back, this was sort of an amazing. It's a little bit my nature, but so I'm going to tell the story, but I'm not going to recommend it as a classic model. But here you go. So early on in the mid 90s, I start a software company. It was called Atcom, and it pioneered high-speed internet in hotel rooms. So you got to remember, this is 97, 98, 99. It's a little bit wild. And we raised some venture capital. We're rolling along, and we have the absolute best software. It was a software problem. You're all, I don't know who's listening, but there used to be little jacks in the hotel room. You'd plug your laptop into the jack, you get high-speed internet in hotel rooms. Now, of course, the world has passed and changed, but that was then. So we go out to raise more money. Of course, we're going broke. We get to January of 99, and we go on a road show to try to get $10 million. We schlepped in New York, and we go here. We got a Silicon Valley investment bank. And in the same time frame, another company, also working in high-speed internet, goes public. And they get to May of, whatever it is, 99, and they've raised $101 million in a public offering. And we're schlepping around town looking for $6, $7, $8 million to stay alive. In the meantime, we've installed about 200 or 300 hotel rooms, maybe 400. We'd done internet kiosks at about 8 or 9 airports. So we had a company. We had revenue, but we were not that good. And we get to June of that year, and there's a big conference. We were a Microsoft special picked whatever. We get to this conference, and the other guy, a guy named Ulysses Auger III. It's a third. It was pretty interesting. So we know each other because we're both battling in the same space, and we don't particularly care for each other, but he's charming. And we actually go to dinner together in June at this conference. He invites me to this private dining. We have dinner. He's got 4 or 5 of his big shots. I mean, we all know each other, and that's the end of it. But I don't like him, and he doesn't like me, and we compete. Simultaneously, in parallel, an RFP comes out from, we had done Hilton and Hyatt, and now there were 150, 200,000 rooms come up for an RFP. This was DoubleTree, Starwood, Marriott. There was a lot of rooms. So we're both competing because we're gonna compete to win the contract to install the rooms to internet. And it's clear that we don't have enough money to compete. This is insanity. We're basically going to go broke sometime in September, and we can't seem to find. We got great software, and we couldn't seem to find enough money. So there's this moment, and as I say, it's a true story, but I don't recommend it. It's a little bit like driving blindfold. I actually call Ulysses, and I say to him, you know, there's a couple of 100,000 rooms up for grabs here, and we're both competing. There's really no reason to compete. Why don't we get together and have one unified offer? And to do that, I've thought about it, and all things considered, I'd like to buy your company. You got to stop and think for a minute, because at that moment in time, we had about $27,000 in the bank. We had enough money to maybe make 2 more payrolls. Maybe we had 30,000 in the bank, but we had 40 employees, so maybe we had 60,000. But my point is, we didn't have any money. So there's this wonderful kind of silence, which is sort of, look, Centuria, you piece of shit. If there's anybody going to do any buying, I'm going to buy you. I take a pause. I say, okay. So literally, 48 days later, for $80 million, he buys our company because he needs the software to win the contracts for all of the hotels. Now, what's interesting is this. If he had waited 40 days, he could have bought it for $1. But he had a pretty good-sized ego, and when this little sort of nobody from the West Coast calls up and says, hey, I'll buy your company, you know, hey, like no way, baby. Any buying's going to get done. I'm buying you. I didn't argue. So that was a pretty clever negotiation, but let's just peel back a moment. It was a negotiation born out of desperation. Now, it turns out I'm a hero, the board loves me, and everybody made a small fortune. But it's also possible that he could have said, "You're out of your mind. I'll see you in bankruptcy court." So there is no magical, there's no textbook for that kind of play. I'm going to recommend a book for everybody. There's a lot of books. One of them, of course, you have to read Dan Kahneman. Kahneman. Kahneman is the Nobel Prize winner for behavioral economics, and anything he's written is what you need to read. I mean, it is how people think is really important. So and one of my rules in my book is that more money is lost through neurotic behavior than through bad business decisions. So I recently read a book I'm a big fan of called Thinking in Bets, B-E-T-S, Thinking in Bets. It's written by Annie Duke. Annie Duke is a famous, world-famous championship poker player. And she talks about decision-making, because essentially negotiation, either with the other person or with yourself, is decision-making. So she uses an example. She says there's a difference between a chessboard and a poker table. So in a chessboard, you can see all the pieces. So everything is exposed. So remember, I talked about power, information, and time. So a chessboard is information. I see all the pieces. Now, there might be 1.6 million potential moves, but I can see everything. And in the poker table, you can't see that. You have no idea. But she talks about how to make decisions with incomplete information. It's really interesting. And the other thing she says, and I think this is good for entrepreneurs, is to beware of resulting. So resulting is what happens when a poker player makes a good decision but gets a bad result. You know, the odds are 86% the card will be but it comes up different. So you have a good decision, rationally made, and a bad result. And what the factor that causes that you have to allow for is luck. And you need to be careful, because sometimes you get good luck and bad luck. I'll tell you a story about luck in a minute. But you can't let the result inform or change the decision process. If you make good decisions, over time, the results will be in the positive category. If you practice shooting free throws exactly correctly, then probably you're going to be in the 80s instead of in the 70s, because over time, I mean, you may get it's a matter of staying with the decision process, however you set that up, without being too affected by the results, which I like that. I was going to say something else, but I got lost. So anyway, that's my story about books and information and time and behavior.
So is it possible, when you talk about the other element, power, you know, for an entrepreneur standpoint, especially a first-time entrepreneur, being able to shift the perception of power between the either customer, partner, or investor to the entrepreneur?
Okay, so I want to change that a little. It's not, let's do it this way. Power is another word for leverage, but I've backed a couple of biotechs, and our dance partners are, you know, Pfizer and Roche, so billion. And the way that we've handled it is to assume that you're going to get more than one bite at the apple. So the very first deal, they paid us $22,000 to do something that was probably worth $100,000. But the answer is, let us prove to you that the technology is terrific. So you got to pay something. You want a little skin in the game, but all the power is with Pfizer. You do the work and they say, this is really terrific. And then the second time, it's a little more equal. You do it again. This time you get 48 or 62. And by the third time, then the power is at least equal and maybe shifted in your face because they say, we really like this, we need it. So what I'm suggesting is you need to view this negotiation business as having multiple bites at the apple. It's just impossible, especially if the other guy is a monster. You can't really get to the end game in one whack. You got to kind of take a bite, prove it, get a bite. I'm in favor of. So that's the answer to shifting in your favor using time and starting out more modestly. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you about the modest. Modest isn't the right word, but the number of stuff that I'm like the Tijuana River. Stuff flows through my office all day long. I mean, I have no shortage of deal flow. I'm flowed over. And one of the determinants, one of the ways you kind of get on my radar, so to speak, and I do this on the other side as well, is if you come to me and you say, I have nothing, I have no ideas, I have a piece of paper, I'm tall and handsome, and my pre-money is $4 million. I said, well, that's not quite going to work for me. So I'll tell a story. So there's a company that I'm not an investor in, but know a lot about because I'm pals with the board members, and we got this little group of guys, sort of VCs in a van, and we hang around. So here's the story, no names and no company. The CEO of the company, we go to see him, and he says, nah, I'm growing, I'm this, I'm that, I need some money. We say, okay, we got a few $100,000, we'll give you some money. He says, it's at a 25 million pre. I said, no, it's not. We're not going to do that. He says, no, that's what it's worth. I said, yeah, well, it might be worth that to you, but it's not worth it to us. So, but we'll give you the money at like 14, 15. We're in that deal, but 25 we can't do. So he says, drop dead, goodbye. Here's how the story ends, of course. He runs out of cash. He has to take a loan from, Manny Gambino. It's a 30% interest rate. It's a terrible deal. It gets him alive. And finally, he gets a deal to put in a few $1 million in somebody instead of 12. Now, that's classic. That's classic stupidity. He's more worried about dilution than he was about keeping the company going. And he took a good offer, turned it down to end up with a lousier offer. So the problem in this negotiation, it's not, I mean, you can read, there's 500 books on how to negotiate. But at the end of the day, it seems to me that the entrepreneur's most classic mistake, two mistakes. One is he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and by the he or she. So this is one of the rules, says it's what you don't know that you don't know that will kill you. So when you come in to see me and you don't know, but you try to convince me that you do know, I got a great bullshit detector. I mean, I have a PhD in bullshit detection. So you won't get away with that. It's much better if you say, look, I know this. I'm a domain expert in window cleaning, but I don't know anything about liquidated damages or term sheets. Okay, let me see if I can help you. But if you come in the other way, which is I know everything, probably, unless you really do, it's not the best outcome. And the other sentence is this thing about dilution. The young entrepreneur, and I'm not even sure young. So a guy walks in yesterday who's 48, and he's got a mess, and I'm going to try to fix it. But, he owns 100% of the company, and if he wants my gang, he'll own up 70% of the company. Now, my attitude is great. If you own 70% of the company that's worth more than you started with, you have a smaller piece of a much bigger pie, and that's the process. I own less of a much bigger pie. But if you insist on owning the whole pie, probably you're going to get a stomach ache. You're going to be in trouble. I asked him a question. I said, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? There's only one answer to that. but he kind of hesitated. He wasn't quite sure because he's got a little bit of the king quotient. And rich versus king means, do you want to get rich? I want you to say to me, I want to get rich. Great. I like that. You want to get rich? I'm into rich. That's okay. That might be social good. You can give your money away. You can give it to charity. You can do what you want. But you got to have a focus that says, I'm in this game not to have power, but in this game to build something of substance and of value, either value, and value can be any kind of term, but value. So we'll see how it ends. We'll see if we actually complete the investment. I don't know. I think when we finally come back and say, the pie's going to be a lot bigger, but you don't own the whole pie, he may say no. My attitude is, look, pal, you need an oven. We're experts at ovens. So if you have a pie and you need my oven, if you don't come into the oven, you're not going to be able to eat the pie. So that's what I know about that.
Very good points. I've got a few questions, and then we've got at least, we're going to open it up for questions. First is, based on what you shared, what do you see as the most common reasons why deals fall apart?
Oh, that's an easy one. I hope your listeners, okay, it starts with an E. Ego. Stupidity. It's two. It's ego, stupidity, arrogance, all of those words. But the key sentence, just remember, I sort of told everybody that I study. I'm getting better at it, but I'm not an expert. I study what's called behavioral economics, which is a fancy word for why do people do stupid things. So the reason deals fall apart is that either or both sides do not act in their own best, here comes the key word, perceived self-interest. So rational economics says people act in their own best self-interests. The trick, of course, is determining what is in your best self-interest. And I see people all the time, who, here, I'll tell you a story. So I have a client. I actually do coaching. I got a half a dozen guys, men and women actually, who pay me periodically to give advice. That doesn't mean it's worth anything. It doesn't mean they're going to take it, but I get paid to give advice. And here's the story. I got a guy. Guy needs a warehouse. So we figure it out. I've been working with him for 3 or 4 months, and we get a proposal from Mr. Smith for a warehouse. So I get him on the phone. I say, does this meet our needs? He said, yeah. I said, well, let's go over it. We go over it, and we were willing to pay $5. This guy only wants $3. So it sounds like a good deal. Yeah. So then I do this game where I say to him, well, what am I not understanding? Because remember, you run the business. I'm a consultant. We go through it again. I say, well, isn't $3 less than $5? Yeah. So let me ask you, is there anything that I don't understand about this offer? No. And so at the very end, this takes 45 minutes, but he's my client. He finally is able to say, this is a really good offer. Now, it fascinated me. I could tell you on minute 3, it's a really good offer, unless I misunderstood, unless there's a secret word, unless there's disappearing ink. Give me a fucking break. 3 is less than 5. But my client, it was hard to commit. It was hard to believe it was good. It took him time. Because there's other issues. What about? It was interesting. What was clearly in his best interests took him a while to get there. People do this all the time. It's all the time. And then what happens is it goes away. And then you say, oh, no, I want it back. No, can't have it back. So that is the sort of lost. That's the but wait, it's gone. It's gone. And then when you call back, could I have it back? No. And if I call you back and you want it back, it's 5. But it was 3. It was 3, 4 weeks ago. It was 3. Now it's 5. So the reason deals fall apart is that by and large, people are terrible at acting in their best interest. So here's the best story of all. So I told you about Kahneman, Nobel Prize. I've read everything. He's brilliant. Just go buy any book. Last one is Thinking Fast and Slow. So he gets to the end of one of these books, and he says, these are the last 5-6 pages. Essentially, he says, oh, I was going to talk about luck. I got to do that. I forgot about luck, and then I'm done. So he says, he's talking to the reader. He says, you got to understand, I'm Dan Kahneman. I won the Nobel Prize and am the considered guru for rational man behavior and how to act in your own best self-interest. I wrote books on it. I won the Nobel Prize. He's talking about it in his book. He says, I have to tell you that in my own personal life, I get it wrong 20% of the time. You got to think about it. It's fantastic. The best in the world. They are the best. Amos Tversky's his partner. And he says, you know, I'm the best at it, and I still get it wrong 20% of the time. That tells you how hard it is to act rationally. I am sure everyone on this webinar and in your worlds, you're all convinced you act rationally. I'm telling you, it's really hard. It requires effort. It's like working out. It's like going to the gym. It is hard. And to do it well, you got to read a lot of books. And one of the things I like is I'm a big fan of either psychotherapy or analysis or psychology or mentoring. You know, one of the problems with one of the deals is we have a little gang. We got $50. We're willing to invest. And the first question we have, beside the market and all that, is he or she mentorable? I'll tell you a story. I have another deal where it's the woman CEO. Insane. It's not because this is not sexist. I have insane men, but disconnected from the numbers. The company is headed for a brick wall. Can't see it because she cannot admit that it's possible. It's even possible that could be a brick wall. That's not a brick wall. I said, looks like a brick wall. Nope, I can't see the brick wall. So the reason deals and companies crater by and large, mostly, some of the times anyway, is just borderline psychiatric stupidity.
Okay. All right.
I got one last story, and then I'll take questions, and I'm getting off the phone.
Okay.
So I want my listeners to understand about luck, because I told you the story about Annie Duke and luck, decision-making, resulting. So Kahneman says the following. He says, luck is not random. It's a true force. It exists. It's fascinating. So here's his analogy. He says, you go on a train platform, you stand on the platform. You got to stay on the platform. Don't go buy a ticket. Don't go to the ladies' room. Don't get a cheeseburger. If you wait on the platform, the luck train comes through. And when it does, you get on it. Huh? Now, there is no schedule. Oh, it doesn't come through at 9:08. Nope. Just got to wait. It comes through. But what you know is it does come through. It's not coming. It comes. It goes through, and if you're there, you get on it. That's really interesting. It's not always, it's just kind of interesting. I've been the great beneficiary of disproportionate good luck. And so I'd end with this. Entrepreneurs, the last quality entrepreneurs should have in any negotiation is gratitude. So anyway, I'll take 2 or 3 questions, and then we're out of here. Miss Folsom, what do you want to do? You got any text from anybody?
Yep. One last one. Would you ever recommend a first-time entrepreneur to hire a third party to source? No, and
no. I don't have strong feelings there. No investment banker. You don't hire somebody to find you money. No, and no, and no. Because if you go to people if you go to a venture capitalist, and if somebody goes on your behalf, you will get an absolute no. And that's true for venture capital. And for angels, it's probably true 92% of the time. Now, you will need a banker if you sell your company. And you may need a banker if you're raising $30 million in a Series B or a Series C because you have a company. But if you're a beginner and you say, I want to pay somebody to find me some money, don't do it.
Very good. All right, so we're going to open ourselves up for questions. The first one we've got, can you talk about countering the use of silence with regards to negotiations?
Well, I don't know what the word countering means, but I love silence. Silence is like a no. It's a powerful thing. So one of the things I notice, I mean, let's just change it from silence to knowing when to stop talking. So if one of the things you see is that people in their explanation will say, the car runs really well on, and it has and it comes with, and if there's a silence, and we'll sell it for. The trick is learning when to end the sentence and stop. No, that's not the other side. That's your side. The entrepreneur side says, I'm going to make a declarative sentence or ask a question, but I'm not going to reframe it. So, for example, on the news shows, you always see, let's do Rachel Maddow. She'll say it, then she'll say it again, and then she'll ask it and reframe it. She'll say it 3 times before the other person gets to talk. That's just a technique for television news. But in your case, you should ask a question and then allow the silence and wait. It's hard because you want to fill it. Silence is uncomfortable. But I'm okay with, I do lots of conference calls and board calls. Once I'm done talking, I just say, that's it. I say, well, I think we should do X. And wait. You don't have to say an X and because don't keep filling the space. So that's my answer to, I don't know about countering, but, one more thing on the other side. So the silence is okay after you've asked a question and wait. And then the other side is answer the question. So guy comes in. This is classic. And it's great technology. And I say, well, let me ask you, what is the unit cost per? Then I drop. I'm done. And I get an answer that is, it's sunny out. I said, no. What is the unit cost? In other words, you must answer, the unit cost is $1.27 per blop. You can't, don't not answer the question. And the corollary is, if you don't know the answer, say, I don't know, but I'll get you an answer. But don't sort of go off somewhere. That it demonstrates a behavior that investors dislike. I either want the answer as best you know it, or I don't know the answer, I'll get you the answer. But don't go off on the other side. That makes people crazy.
So related to that one, what if that other side that you're negotiating with, you ask them a specific question and they don't answer your specific question, but it gives you all kinds of information that can be perceived to distract you? How do you come around to that, especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur?
Well, I'm not sure that I'll answer a different question. That's a political thing. I'll go back to where I was. On my side, I am polite the first time. Let me ask the question again. And if I get another sort of orthogonal answer, I kind of say to them, look, you got to answer the question. If you don't, I'm polite enough, but I'm also, it's telling me whether or not the person is mentorable. Because at the end of the day, go back to the very beginning of this discussion, you start out with, do you want smart money or dumb money? And the argument in theory is you want smart money, but smart money, not just the valuation, but the expectation of involvement. So what you should want, it seems, is smart money and a network, a Rolodex, a willingness to do more than write a check. Some of the people you might want, you just want their money, but I think especially if you use the word first time, you really need a mentor. You really need a mentor, and there's just no substitute. There is no substitute for that. So the reason I tell you that is, so anybody who is a psychoanalyst has had psychoanalysis. They don't just show up to get out of school and they say, okay. There's a whole training process. So you're not just going to spring full blown. I mean, you may know a lot about quantum computing, but you may know nothing about managing people. And you need all of that.
Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank you so much, Neil, for sharing your expertise. I will grant you the title if I was, queen for a day, doctor of negotiations. It's always such a delightful conversation with you with regards to sharing your insights and perspective to help entrepreneurs and investors with getting better deals done. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of your program and of you. Thank you all, and have a good day.
All right. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Everyone, join us for the next Founders First Friday, which will happen at the end of April. And we have another exciting, intriguing topic, as well as a very engaging expert. Until then, we wish you a great day and happy deal making.